Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shirley Manson and Steve from Garbage. I have to say I'm feeling a wee bit underdressed in the neck department, Shirley. That is a fine choker.
Thank you.
So you flew in on Friday and had a chance to go around Dublin. What did you think of our capital city?
I mean, the whole band went out and about yesterday, and I get my own mic while it's
Much
cool.
better.
Is it on? Yeah.
It's
no,
on.
we loved it. It was amazing. We went all over the shop and went to a bunch of galleries, and it was beautiful.
This is the first date on a big tour. It's hard to believe that version 2.0 is so old and it's 20 years of being paranoid. What were your expectations when you first got into a rehearsal room together? Do you think you'd still be here all these years later?
Absolutely not. We had no idea. We just wanted to make a record. The first one turned out pretty well. People kind of liked it, and then the second one took off like crazy. But we never thought we'd be here this far away.
So I remember you saying to me, Shirley, on the phone recently that the longevity is down to the fact you've actually got to the point you trust each other.
I don't trust him, but I trust the rest of them.
Not for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, we still love each other and we still enjoy being together. I mean, that doesn't mean it's always 100% harmonious, but, it is what it is at
Nothing
this point.
is.
Yeah.
Now, are you playing the album in its entirety tonight? Is that later on in the tour you're going to be doing it back to back?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually playing a sort of more of an eclectic set today. That the Electric Picnic, which is the only Irish festival that's ever invited us over to play.
Whoa!
Thank you very much.
Round of applause.
They requested that we play a sort of an assorted mixture of songs, and so tomorrow's the first show. The day after tomorrow in Edinburgh, we play the record in its entirety.
And I imagine Edinburgh is going to be crazy in terms of guest lists and family members crawling out to the woodwork.
Yeah, my dad has a bigger guest list than I do, to be honest. So I'll be a bunch of octogenarians in the back row. But yeah, I mean, I come from the British Isles, and so coming to this neck of the woods always feels sort of like coming home in a funny way.
I think a lot of bands reckon the crowds are quite similar. It's the Celtic thing, obviously.
It is a Celtic thing. Unfortunately, we're all bound together a little in the way we look at the world and have experienced the world in a funny way.
Now, going back to version 2.0, when you decided to do that, did you just get into a rehearsal room and jam it all out again? Had you remembered the songs, or?
A lot of them we have to go back and listen to the record again to kind of remember how it all goes together. And some of it we've been playing, all these years. We've been on a lot of tours, and we know very well how they go. So it's all different.
And Shirley, you were saying one of the joys was rediscovering the B-sides that you'd probably forgotten recording in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it really was 20 years ago that we made this record. It's sort of bizarre, and I mean, I've never listened to the album, let alone the B-sides. So to go back, it was like sort of meeting your own band for the first time. It was very, very strange.
Do you recognise yourself in those songs, or do you feel quite a different person now because so much has happened since?
No, sadly, I recognise myself. I mean, it's a bit like for all you guys, like looking at your old school photos. It's exactly that same experience. You see yourself in it, and you remember how you felt, and you're cringing a little, but then you're also sort of like, oh my God, who is that person?
I sometimes think, with bands like The Jam and The Clash, that and perhaps yourselves agree, the B-sides are very telling, because they're the ones you don't particularly think about. You just do.
And you're right, a lot of the times when you don't think about stuff and you just do it, it's more honest in a way, more direct.
There's one in particular you told me you really have fallen back in love with. Is that in the set?
That is, well, there's a few actually. I mean, I love Like the Pavement, which I think should have been on the record, and instead it didn't make it. But I love Like the Pavement, and I love the cover that we did of Big Stars 13. That Alex Chilton, I think I told you this on the phone. Alex Chilton himself said that was his favourite cover of any of his songs. So that was like to us, like, oh my God, this is the greatest compliment of all time.
Yeah. Now, Garbage is obviously a democracy, but some people are more democratic than others. When it came, say, to that song not making the album, who has the final say? Who actually wins the arguments?
It literally has to be all four of us agreeing.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't get done.
So it is a true democracy.
Yeah, I mean, as much as there is such a thing as a true democracy, you know, I mean, some members, like Steve, is more laid back than I am and is maybe less noisy than me. So sometimes he just takes a back seat, and sometimes, you know, the loud voice wins, and vice versa. Sometimes when Steve speaks up and really puts his foot down, then you don't fuck with that. You know, because you know it's... You know,
You strike me as the quiet, strong type that just observes. Yeah. Now, Steve, I suppose this all started in 1979 with you meeting Butch at University in Madison. Could you paint a picture of your student...
Did you say 1939?
No, he didn't.
79.
79.
It was like, holy...
We're
It's
all
like the other
not that
day.
old.
It's like the other day. You thought I'd called you a diva, and I called you an eager beaver, and I thought Shirley was going to lash into me, and I said, no, I didn't call you. She said, that's not diva behaviour. I said, no, eager beaver. We nearly fell out within about 5 minutes of the interview. But no, between the wars, what was it like in Wisconsin?
What it was like back then?
No, your college days with Butch. Paint us a picture of...
You know, I was basically dropping out of college. I barely went to class. We would stay up all night going to shows. He was in the one cool band in Wisconsin, so we'd all go see him and his band. Duke was also in that band. They were kind of our idols, and then we got to hang out like at beer parties after the shows. And you know, I had a 4-track tape deck, which was really rare back then, and so they kind of latched on to me as being a way to record their demos, and we just started doing it and made a weird little business out of it. And recording other punk bands and that sort of thing, and that's how we got going.
There was a good scene there back then, was there?
Yeah, it was awesome. There's always great music around you have to look for, but yeah, it was good. It was like the beginnings of punk in the States.
So legend has it, and I think it's true, that it was you seeing an Angelfish video. It was a Damascus moment. You thought, aha, we want her. How did she find out about it?
We had a fax machine, which was how you communicated back then. And we faxed over here to the UK, somewhere, I don't know. We had a contact, and we asked if they could look up who this weird band Angelfish was and where they were from. We didn't even know. No, I think they maybe said on the MTV, they said they were from Scotland, so we didn't know where that was. And but they tracked her down and found her, and the rest is...
And Shirley, were you immediately impressed by their advances?
Well, I mean, I sort of was, because the way the message was relayed to me was that Butch Vig wanted to take a meeting with me, and I was like, Butch Vig? Who the fuck's that? And they were like, well, he's only the producer of Nirvana's Nevermind and Sonic Youth's, you know, Dirty and Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream, and I was immediately sort of like, holy shit, because they were all bands that I loved, you know. So I was blown away.
And again, you know, was it a fairly instant thing when you got to jam together? Did you know instinctively this is what you're going to do for at least a couple of years?
I don't know if even that, you know. At first it went horribly bad. First, yeah.
How bad?
Well, we had some ideas for songs which didn't include words or melodies.
So what are you going to do?
And then we asked Shirley to sing them.
And I had never written a word in my life before, or a note before, so I sat at the mic like any of you would if somebody said, write a song. And you go, yeah, okay, because you don't want to blow the chance. And then I sang into the mic like this. This is exactly how I sang. And needless to say, that they were like, yeah, maybe this isn't going to work out.
So how many sort of horrible sessions ensued before it started to click into place?
Just that one, really. I went home back to Scotland. I was still touring with another band, and they called me back up, and we tried again because we liked each other and we had a good connection as a band and as people.
Yeah. I'd never realised you hadn't sort of written anything before that. So quite a baptism of fire to be in this kind of circle of people expected to produce. But obviously you picked it up fairly quick.
I picked it up, but, you know, I mean, there's a lot to be said for just trying stuff that you've never done before, I guess, as a result of that experience.
We were talking the other day, myself and Shirley, we did an interview for Hot Press in the current issue about the redemptive powers of rock and roll. And I just happened to be lucky enough to be shortly after 9/11 in New York when Garbage played with U2. And it's a gig that still puts goose pimples on my goose pimples. There was something in the air that day. And I know, Shirley, you were saying it was and Steve, a very special night for you.
That was unbelievable. We did a whole tour in the States with those guys, right after 9/11, and it was a time when it was weird for people to even want to get together in a building like that. It felt weird and unsafe a bit. So when they did, it was like this community and it was like a church, and every night they had the visuals that they had to commemorate what had happened, and the people that had been involved was it was almost like crying every night, but it was healing also.
Yeah, it was quite understated the way they did it. I like,
especially that night in New York and Madison Square Garden.
First night in, I'd never known New York to sort of feel like that. You're about to go on tour in the States. Have you been around the States since all the madness has been happening in Pennsylvania Avenue? Do you know what to expect as you go around the country?
Well, with this current administration, you don't know what to expect wherever you go in America currently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty dire situation. Certainly if you're not a racist and you're not a sexist and you're not misogynist and so on and so forth, if you're a decent soul, I find this current administration kind of repugnant, actually. And so, I don't know. America is under a lot of duress currently. It's weird to, I grew up, much like I'm sure the Irish, seeing America as a superpower, and currently we're watching it sort of really struggle and sort of not really understand its role in global politics, and it's very strange.
I'm a little bit scared to go back. I don't mean from a physical point of view, but whether I want to be there. But I would like to go around the country again. I haven't for years and just see how people are. And of course, you've got to remember lots of good people are in all those pockets that voted for him. But I'd say that would be an interesting and maybe quite emotive tour as you go out on the road, because I think people are looking more and more, as they do always, to art and music in times of stress.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, I come across a lot of responses from the people because I'm sort of the interface on social media between the band and the public, and so we've had a lot of run-ins with some right-wing, robots and God knows what else, and a lot of verbal sort of abuse and disagreements, and I think we've started to weed all these people out because we've made it very clear: if you're racist, you're sexist, you're misogynist, you don't believe in the rights of other human beings, go elsewhere, follow another band. We're not interested. We don't really care about being a big, huge band. We care about being a band that actually has a good life and treats people with respect.
Which I think is great, because so many bands, and I understand why, shrinking markets and everything, try and ignore the subject. And I think a round of applause for... And I think the activism that you guys get involved with is very commendable, and it's great that you stick up for causes and let people know through the social media. There have been several tributes this weekend to Aretha Franklin. For me, it was a bit of a JFK moment almost when she passed away. Had you ever been in her orbit or seen her live? Or
Certainly love her music and respect every... oops, I didn't say that, did I? Love her as a figure.
Yeah.
Never met her.
We passed by her at a few award ceremonies, as we sort of trembled with excitement. But yeah, we never really officially met her. But we've been in the same orbit. But she was a real great, not just musically, but a social agitator and like a badass. And we're not going to see the likes of her again.
I hadn't realised that Martin Luther King was a regular visitor to the family home, because she was criticised a little bit for not being overtly political, but just by being Aretha, she was being political.
No, she was really political. I mean, when Angela Davis was going to be incarcerated, she was like, I'm going to pay your bail. I mean, she got in, and supported like Black Panthers and You know, she was in there.
Badass.
Aretha.
And who who did you scrawl on your pencil case as a girl, or with Tipex?
Whose name did you write on your pencil case at school?
I'm not telling you that.
Oh, come on. That's because it's embarrassing. I'm sure it's the New York Dolls, or no, perhaps a bit before then. What was your first musical crush? Put it that way.
I was a big Motown fan, so like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, people like that.
Yeah. That's good. No, you're allowed that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was ABBA.
ABBA.
I think it was ABBA.
No, I hope no one's smirking because, you know, the Sex Pistols Pretty Vacant was SOS sped up. Great band, ABBA. Are you excited they're coming back? Will you try and blag a ticket to the reunion thing they're doing?
I don't know. I don't know. I might skip that.
You might skip that. You had a 6-year hiatus, and sometimes hiatus is a euphemism. And we were getting a bit worried this might be curtains. Was there ever a point during that sort of little extended break where it might have happened, or was it always the plan to get the band back together?
No, we didn't have any idea what was going to happen, I don't think, right? It was just sort of like we need a break for a little while, and we didn't do anything until it felt right again, so we didn't want to force it.
We didn't, just to clear this up, I mean, we never split up at any point. It was that casual. It was just sort of like, I want to go home, you guys are doing my head in, and they were like, you're doing our heads in, let's just go home for a bit. And it wasn't like we split up.
No.
Was it?
No.
I love the fact in interviews, Shirley, you're saying that the best is to come. You really seem to have a hunger just to keep going and do different things and bring the band to different places, musically, physically, I suppose, because there's no part of the globe you can't play. Are there still some actual sort of defined goals you have, or just to do what you do even better?
I think I mentioned this on the phone. The thing that has been surprising to me, I'm 52, and I always thought that my musical career would be over by 52, because for women, it's hard enough for men, but if you're a woman, especially a white woman, because black women have the voice and the insane talent to sing like goddesses for the rest of their life. If you're a white woman, it's difficult to sustain a career in alternative rock. It's really rare, and you can count the amount of women that have managed to do that on my two hands, in this particular genre that I'm in. And so I'm more excited about my career currently now in my 5th decade than I was when I was young, because when you're young, you're terrified, and you just think it's going to get torn away from you at any second. And then as you get older and you do more and you get really good at what you do, you're like, oh, nobody can actually take this away from me anymore. And worst case scenario, I'll write for other people, or I just want to be a creative person in my life. I don't give a shit about being famous. I don't think anybody in this band at this point gives a fuck. I mean, there was a moment when it was exciting, and you were like, oh, we're on TV, we're on a magazine, this is fucking rad. And people coming to the shows, that's exciting, but there is something to be said for not giving a shit about numbers and how many fans you've got and how many people follow you, and instead just really enjoy. I mean, first of all, to travel with a band, to come to Dublin, it's extraordinary, I mean, I was in your Writers' Museum yesterday, and I could have wept, the incredible literary history here in Dublin. I did not know Bram Stoker was Irish.
Yeah, he's one of us.
What the fuck? I had no idea.
No, Ireland has always punched above its weight with literature. The new wave of stuff like Kevin Barry and Seamus Heaney, and we're pretty. I'm an adopted Irishman, as you can tell from the accent. I've stopped using the royal we now, but I'm part of the scene here. It's amazing. Steve, I asked this of Shirley before, and she had some great answers, such as playing at the launch of the Scottish Parliament. If you've got to take away a few things from the band over the past 20 or so years, what have been the real kind of pinch me moments?
What were the worst things that we've done?
No, the really good ones. Well, you can have some bad ones first, and then move on to the good if you want.
That tour in 2001 that you mentioned, I think was really touching, and like we really felt like we were doing something that, like I said, brought people together a little bit, and it felt really good. So that was a big thing for me. And we did a lot of really silly things, like meeting famous people that looking back on it, it was exciting at the time, and now it's like, who cares? Mick Jagger, so what?
Yeah, so Mick.
I don't know, I still think it's cool I met Mick Jagger.
Oh, no, quick pop quiz. Who is the coolest member of the Rolling Stones? Shirley first?
Current or past? Or
Well, current lineup or past? Dead or alive?
Keith.
Keith?
Charlie Watts.
Yeah, I'd say it's a dead tie. I do like the new boy, Ronnie Wood, and he's still the new boy.
He's all right, too.
Yeah. Shirley, two things to congratulate you on. I think it was your birthday a few days ago, so happy birthday, Thomas Manson.
Thank you.
But also, you had a very, very, posh-ish night in February. You got Icon Award from the NME. I think Jenny from Savages, who's probably a bit of a kindred spirit, presented it to you. Liam Gallagher was there. Was it a really good night?
It was a surreal night. I mean, yeah, I had a lot of fun and I didn't take it too seriously, but to get acknowledged by the music magazine that basically opened up my whole view of the world and introduced me to all the bands I fell in love with was a great honor for me.
And actually, I wanted just before we finish, because I went and checked out Girls Rock London, and there's a great band called Charm Pit that I've fallen in love with now. But you're involved as an ambassador. Can you just tell us a little bit about the organisation and what you've been involved with?
Well, it's just an initiative to encourage women of all genders, non-binary women, or anyone who identifies as a woman for that matter, trans, etc. It's to encourage female identifying artists to make music, get involved in music, produce music, and so on and so forth, because the statistics, unfortunately, in the music industry are so sad with regards to female representation. And I really want that to change. I think it's great for women, obviously, or female identifying artists, but also for men too. It's good for all of us, I think, to share the pool and share ideas and share power and share the differences that we all enjoy and have it together and be influenced by one another. I just can only think that that's good for our culture, good for us, our own mental health, our physical health, and our society,
Maybe somebody here might start the Dublin version. Fantastic to have the lads in the tent. Steve, Shirley, thank you so much.
Thank you
Garbage.
so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.